we are expecting around 100. And before I hand over to Ivo for the formal introduction, I would like to give you some rules of conduct and technical features that you can use. And I know that I can count on you to make this event as pleasant as possible for everybody involved. So please ensure that your mic is muted at all times unless you are asked or invited to speak. And as you have seen, we invited you to join with your camera on to increase the feeling of connection and to see the faces of the people that are joining us today. You can see them in gallery view. So if you go in the upper right corner, you can choose the view. And in the gallery view, you will be able to see everybody who is attending this meeting. If you would like only to see the person who will be presenting, that just switch back to speaker's view. For the opening panel that will follow this short introduction, the main way to communicate and interact with us and among each other is the chat. So please use that, and you can find it at the bottom of your Zoom screen in the control panel. So in order to ensure that everything is working properly, I would invite you to type in the chat the country and city that you're calling in from, and hopefully we should be able to see a stream of the places that participants are calling in from today. So I see UK, Belgium, South Africa, Germany, many people from the UK, Switzerland, New Delhi, India, the Netherlands, Ontario, Canada, Warsaw, Poland, Germany, Greece, Italy. All right, great. So in the control panel at the bottom of your screen, you can also see some reactions that you can use to clap at the end of the panel and or express your appreciation to the speaker that will be talking. And last but not least, this session is going to be recorded and disseminated after the event. So now, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to our CEO, Ivo Matzer, for the formal opening remarks. Ivo, over to you.
Thank you, Karolina. Dear friends, welcome again. It's really, really nice to see you all. Also in the picture, usually we shake hands and we see each other more close. So let's do it in this way, shaking hands with you, and really, it's really great to see you all. Welcome again, and this first virtual Knowledge into Action Forum. It's the first one, maybe not the last one, because we have some disadvantages to have to see not each other live, but we have also some advantages here. We have a lower footprint, so there's also a few good things in having a virtual event. So we see it as an opportunity, and we are very happy that the attendance is not lower than usual. About the topic, I think we all are aware that we are living in a time of systemic change and paradigm shifts. And I don't know how you feel it, but in this kind of crisis, I feel I'm even more aware of it. I don't know how it works, but in my mind, I feel this paradigm shift more intense than usual. So I think also the theme, what we selected last year, the circular economy, and when we look at the many developments in sustainability, everything is, or most of things are directly or indirectly related to the circular economy. And so this is the main theme, and specific for today. is how to create, how to make it, and not too much to talk about it, but how to make it, how to create it, and also how to learn, which means you will see also today best practices, and especially I think for people like all of us, but also our colleagues in corporates, in academia, also our students, alumni, we all have to move from a linear to a circular economy, which is a paradigm shift. And we can talk, we can teach a lot, but the only thing what really helps is best practices, because this is about the future and we cannot analyze tomorrow. We can only analyze yesterday, and we know that the solution for yesterday will not work for tomorrow. So that's why we really like to organize this forum. It's an action forum. This is not a stand-alone knowledge interaction forum. We started, as I mentioned before, last year, and we will continue also after today. So the best practices you will see today, 4 best practices, but we would like to collect more, and this is also a call for cases and best practices, real life cases. We will publish them, including teaching materials, and share with you and with our members. So that the flow is quite high, and this is also not a standalone, as I told you, not a standalone one. This is a process. That's why we also are using the WOVA app, and we are very happy to see already now that there are many initiatives, many good questions, interesting questions, new themes, new groups. So you are extremely active already before we even started this forum, and we really hope that you will continue. Even there we have some KPIs and results. So we see also in the master board, the leaderboard, that we have really active people. I would like to thank Azan with his 32,000 points, May with 25,400 points, and even the lowest is 2,300 points. So this is really a good achievement. Thank you all. So thank you for your participation. Thank you. I would also like to thank our speakers, panelists, for their engagement, their involvement, their huge preparations, test sessions, and also for today. I would like to thank the board for their extremely high interest and support to let us organize this. And I would like to thank my colleagues, Karolina, Katarina, and Mahfouz, for the great job that they did already before we even start. So I hope you have really a great event, and let's not stop after today. Let's continue our conversations and our progress. Thank you. Karolina.
Thank you so much, Ivo. So now I am pleased to kick off the first session of today, which is our panel on making circular economy work, where we hear from policymakers, academia, and business about perspectives on circular economy. Nottingham Trent Business School and chair of the ABIS board of directors. Baback, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Karolina. And my name is Baback Yazdani. I'm the Dean of Nottingham Business School, and my own area of work is product development. So I'm really eager to listen to this. And I also have the honor of chairing ABIS at the moment. I want to extend a very warm welcome to everyone present, and it's great to see so many faces. I know we're not seeing each other closely, but it is great to see you all anyway. And I want to give a particular thanks to Ivo and the ABIS team to making sure that the Knowledge Interaction Forum this year goes virtual rather than be cancelled, because there are many events across the community that have been cancelled. And at this very time, when COVID-19 pandemic crisis has brought many sectors to a standstill across the world, we must not allow it to stop us from thinking, learning, and coming out of this crisis in a business as usual way, which actually got us into this shape in the first place. Crises also tend to accelerate innovation, and we must exchange our ideas, without which innovations would at best be just a local affair. But we must act globally, and we must act together. And boy, we do need to collaborate across the world now more than ever. I know there are many voices to the contrary, unfortunately very loud voices from very important places, but we do actually have to act together. The subject of circular economy is gaining more and more prominence as well, but we are far from it today. Therefore, there's a great deal to talk about, and a great topic of transition to the circular economy. To do that, we need business, we need governments, we need academia, civil society, and other institutions to create conditions for individuals to live and work in a more cooperative system altogether. And this event is designed to help us gain access and insights from each other and resources to develop a more circular economy in the first place. So it's really my pleasure to welcome and introduce our panel members and speakers now. And I have seen Emmanuelle and Fenna on the board. I'm just going to ask for a second from Karolina to see if Brendan is also present, because I haven't seen his...
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm very relieved to see you, Brendan. So I have great pleasure because we have three excellent contributors on the panel. And I will briefly introduce all three of them and then ask Emmanuelle to start, and then go to Fenna and then to Brendan. Emmanuelle, many of you will know, works at the European Commission in Brussels in the Director General for Environment. She heads the team responsible for sustainable production, products and consumption, i.e. everything. I think the core activity of the team is to support the transition to a circular and green economy in the European Union. She held several positions before this in the European Commission, being the head of the unit for multilateral environmental cooperation between 2015 and 18. And she headed the unit for the EU internal market in aviation. So I think there is very little in terms of policy that she can't talk about, and a great deal more, I'm sure. So we are very pleased to have you here, Fenna is a junior prof at Hamburg University, holding a chair in circular economy, systems and innovation. Her work focuses on unpacking the complexity involved in the circular orientation of innovation and value chains designed for development. Before that, Fenna worked in the Department of Mechanical Engineering at the Technical University of Denmark. She was part of a research project for circular economy integration in Nordic industries for enhanced sustainability and competitiveness, and worked on the Loop Ports project stimulating circular economy in port innovations, port environment, sorry. Before that, she completed her doctoral research at Imperial College in London with a PhD thesis entitled Making Sense of the Circular Economy. So, Fenna, I think it's all up to you, because you know more detail about this than the rest of us, I think, put together. She also holds a couple of degrees from Cranfield and Delft University. So we are really pleased to have Fenna with a great depth of knowledge that's going to help us all. Brendan also is director of the circular economy at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, and he co-developed and oversees Factor 10, WBCSD's flagship circular economy project that has 35 companies from over 15 industries. Since joining WBCSD, Brendan has authored and contributed to over 15 publications, contributed to establishment of Alliance to End Plastic Waste, and oversee the delivery of a circular transition indicators. He has an MBA from Yale, a Master's of Environmental Management from Yale as well, and a BA from Ecological Design from University of California, Santa Cruz. So he's obviously traveled very well. But here's to all of you. This is a glass, Brendan, not a plastic. Hopefully you will appreciate that. So very, very warm welcome. And without further ado, I'm going to ask Emmanuelle to start us off.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. It's really a great pleasure to be with you. As it was explained, I work for the European Commission, who is headed by Ursula von der Leyen. And the role of the European Commission is to propose strategies, but also legislative proposals to the 27 member states of the European Union and to the European Parliament, who are ultimately voting the laws of the European Union. Our role is also to support through different funds our policies, and I'm really glad to have the opportunity to present the new Circular Economy Action Plan that was adopted in March by the von der Leyen Commission. I haven't made a long presentation, but just two slides. And the next slide will explain what it is all about. So in order to transform our European economy from a linear economy to a circular economy, we need to be bolder on a series of actions that need systemic change, and for which we envisage 35 actions along the entire lifetime of products. So basically, this is the agenda that is now presented for the 5 forthcoming years with a number of details. And I would like to explain the key priorities from the von der Leyen Commission. First of all, we need to make sure that sustainable products become the norm in the European Union. So far, we have had energy related products being subject to a number of energy efficiency requirements, but we don't have a global approach to make sustainable products the norm in the European Union. So this is clearly the new flagship of the European Union. How can we promote the update, the creation of these sustainable products? Then we see that we need to be bolder also to empower consumers and public authorities in making the green choices. For example, on green public procurement, the rules are completely voluntary, and we would like to move towards more mandatory rules for public authorities to buy green. We also need to empower consumers like you and me to buy green, and to make sure that when they are provided with information on green claims, for example, that those claims are really reliable and we know what we are buying, if this is green or if this is misleading. Then, as we did for plastics, to try to transform the economy of plastics, we would like to focus on a number of key sectors which represent our daily life, I would say, and many of our economic activities. So focusing on electronics and ICT, batteries and vehicles, packaging, textiles, buildings, food, water, and nutrients. So the new Circular Economy Action Plan identify those key value chains. We have done a lot in the past on making sure that we have a better waste management system in the European Union. But still, the quantities of waste generated in Europe are impressive. I think it's about 500 kilos of municipal waste per EU citizen, 173 kilos of packaging every year. So we need to ensure less waste and make sure that the waste are transformed into secondary raw materials and increase the competitiveness of the secondary raw materials versus virgin material, which is particularly complex in the current circumstances. We have one strand of work on making circularity work for people. And in that context, we highlight that we will develop the Pact for Skills on Education to integrate the circular economy dimension in a better way. And we also refer to the role of the European Technology Institute and the knowledge and innovation communities across Europe that gather universities, businesses, to basically share even more knowledge on circular economy. So a recognition that education, learning is paramount. We have also the last part of the Circular Economy Action Plan, which is on leading global efforts on circular economy. And I'm glad that we have colleagues from all around the world, including Ontario, Canada, and New Delhi. And I also saw the Golden Gates in San Francisco. So there we really would like to team up with other governments, regions of the world to make circular economy happen. We know that Europe alone can certainly not succeed, and this is something that needs to be taken up globally, multilaterally, in all aspects. So if the international education community, business community can join, this is great. The next slide, and this is the last one, is some references that you may find helpful. So first of all, the entire document regarding the new Circular Economy Action Plan, but also the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform, where we invite all stakeholders to post the best practices so that everyone can learn and perform better on the circular economy. And we would like to involve much more the knowledge and innovation communities in that process and develop much more the platform. So help would be very much welcome on this. The last one is a reference to the monitoring framework for the circular economy that helps us looking at where we are, how we progress on the circular economy. We have a number of indicators. They are certainly not complete, and more work will be needed also in the forthcoming years to do this. I stop here. I'm mindful of the time, and I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Emmanuelle. And with that cue to what the academics can do, perhaps I can ask Fenna now to take us through her discussion.
Thank you so much for the invitation to join you in this meeting today. I'm very much looking forward to making a contribution and hearing from all the other speakers today as well. You asked me to offer some reflections on what the research says. In research, recently I've seen more and more work that is in line with circular economy as an umbrella concept. Already a few years ago, I did some work with my colleague Geraldine Brennan around trying to understand a bit better what do the different people say about how to operate within a circular economy and what a circular economy looks like. You see some of these images on the slide just here. And these frameworks, these ideas, they have very important similarities. They highlight that it's important to focus both on visible and invisible types of waste. But there's also important differences. They focus on different types of strategies, different relationships between different strategies. And that's where I really became interested in the topic. How do you as a business go from this set of available strategies to figuring out what's relevant for your context, and how do you leverage that as a source of value creation? If you go to the next slide. I was lucky enough to do a whole bunch of case studies with companies looking into where they see problems within their value chain. So each of these diagrams is a little overview of a value chain and the flows within it as viewed by the companies who I was doing the case studies with. And you see mapped upon here where they see different problems, whether that is a waste being generated or other types of problems in their value chains. And on the next slide, you see the proposed solutions. So what is the role of circular strategies in addressing the problems that they perceived? And you see that they look very different. There's also lots and lots of different strategies for each individual mapping. If you go to the last slide, you can see those two next to each other. So the situation to move away from, the business as usual, where they perceived problems, and the proposed solution on the other side. Now, what this gives a really good overview of is really the degree to which these circular solutions rely on different circular strategies to work together. They sort of need to fit together as the pieces of a puzzle, if you like. And I think this is what we're starting to see more and more is the integration of these different strategies. Emmanuelle already showed it in her presentation as well, that there's a broad range of actions across the value chain. But I think we're also at the beginning of trying to understand this. There's a lot of in-depth knowledge on recycling. There's a lot of in-depth knowledge on remanufacturing. There's a lot of in-depth knowledge on product service systems. But how do all these different things fit together? It's a high need for knowledge integration there. And I think the good thing is that, like I said, we're seeing more and more work heading in that direction, trying to plot a course across all these different fields of knowledge and trying to integrate them through different tools and approaches. So I think we're definitely moving towards the right type of integrated thinking, but I definitely agree with Emmanuelle and what was already said, that we still have a long way to go. And I think with that, I'll hand over to Brendan.
Thank you very much, Fenna. And may I invite Brendan to start his discussion. Thanks, Brendan.
Very good. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you for inviting me to participate in this. Oftentimes we're just speaking with the business community, so it's nice to come up for air and actually speak to a different group of stakeholders here, and I appreciate the opportunity. And it's great to hear Emmanuelle and Fenna's talks or presentations on what they've been working on. It's also very interesting to see a different perspective on a lot of the same topics we're talking about. And I already have made a note here to download Fenna's recent study, just so I can take that thinking and apply our experience to it. Anyway, so background on WBCSD, World Business Council for Sustainable Development. We're a global CEO-led organization of around 200 companies collectively committed to a sustainable world by 2050. Our members come from many different sectors and all major economies, collectively represent over 8.5 trillion in annual turnover and 19 million employees. Our mission as an organization is to accelerate the transition to a sustainable world by making more sustainable business more successful. And within that, Baback mentioned the Factor 10 project, which we launched in 2018, as we then recognized a surge in interest in the concept of circular economy within our membership. And it has grown to the point today from being kind of a side project in 2018 to being one of the 6 core program offerings that we have as WBCSD, just based on the interest from the companies we have. And within that circular economy program, Factor 10, some of you might recognize the name, coming ultimately from the Factor 10 Institute, who is calling for a tenfold improvement in resource efficiency to stay within the means of the planet. And that's really the message that we wanted to push within the business community, is that as Fenna and Emmanuelle mentioned, a lot of the conversations to date have been around recycling or waste diversion. Increasingly, what we want them to think about is doing, not settling for less bad, but reevaluating what they do entirely so that they are actually doing well and good at the same time. So within our Factor 10 project, as Baback mentioned, we were bringing together over 35 companies from 15 different industries located all around the world to work on 6 specific challenges that they face. The first is around metrics, or a common methodology for measuring their circular performance. Another one around policy, or bringing members together to understand what are some of the newest national and regional circular economy related policies that they should be aware of and the implications for their businesses. But increasingly trying to take advantage of the maturity or evolution in their thinking to say, okay, as we are able to bring together progressive thinkers or progressive companies across 15 different industries, how can we begin to pull up policy recommendations or asks to say, we as progressive business feel like these solutions will help us move towards circularity quicker. And then we have 4 sector deep dives that we work with respective value chains in. The first, and here you'll actually recognize quite good parallel with the presentation that Emmanuelle mentioned. The first deep dive we have is on bioeconomy. So working with companies across many different industries as to understanding what bioeconomy means for them, what are the economic opportunities for them in doing it, and being able to honestly understand what are the trade-offs as they move towards what we're calling for more circular, low carbon bioeconomy, and not just a shift to bioeconomy in general. The second deep dive is on buildings, massive environmental impact there. And really that conversation is quite underserved in the circular economy discussions that we've heard. So what we're trying to do right now is articulate the business case. So why not only companies along the value chain would want to move towards circularity, but focusing on the really important part of that value chain in the beginning. We're really effectively articulating what is the business case for developers, for finance, and for real estate, because until we convince them that there is a business case, there really isn't going to be a demand pull for a lot of the solutions that are already existing later on down the value chain. Thirdly, plastic and packaging, the massive topic within our membership, within, well, no matter who you talk to, and we're refining a proposal for what work we will be doing in there. We played a large role in the launch of the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, which took off last year. And then lastly, on electronics, there's a lot of urgency in this industry to get a hold of this issue. They've seen what has happened with plastics and packaging. They don't want to be the next one to go through that. So what we've been able to do is work with 6 other organizations and our respective member companies to come together. And this year we're working on establishing a common vision for circular electronics by 2030 and building out a roadmap for how the industry will achieve that in that time frame. So that's the kind of work we do with Factor 10. The 200 companies, those are mostly almost entirely large multinational companies. But increasingly, it's important for us to work with different organizations, universities, and governments to ensure that what we produce is understood by other stakeholders, and we begin to have that broader collaboration that Baback mentioned as well. I'll stop there.
And first thing I'm going to do is thank all of you for giving us those introductions. But second point is that there's been some chat happening, and we invite some questions. While those questions you can post in chat, so Karolina can have a look at them and inform us so the panel can discuss about them. Perhaps I can start off by saying, by going for each one of you in turn, to talk about what do you think are the key incentives and stimuli to bring the transition about. And perhaps I come to Emmanuelle first.
Well, I think there is a need to act at all level of the loop, as previously mentioned, and the key incentive from a policy perspective is to make sure that we reach climate neutrality by 2050, which is the overarching goal of the European Union. And looking at energy only will not solve the equation. So in the context of the Green Deal, the European Commission has articulated a strategy. It has different reasons to act, and one of it is really circular economy. We see also that we have a massive opportunity to do better. Currently in the European Union, we are using only 12% of recycled materials for the new production, so meaning that we are relying 88% of the time on virgin material, which very often makes us dependent, and very much dependent on certain materials and value chains. So there is a societal need to act. This is an agenda which is a shared agenda of the 27 member states of the European Union and of the European Parliament. And this is the way we want to go, both through regulatory measures to incentivize, for example, the uptake of secondary raw materials, but also through supportive action, through research and innovation, through the regional funds, which are used across Europe to make sure that regions that are less favored than others can catch up, through investment policies, be it public and private. So there is really a need for urgency at EU level, and this will not disappear as a result of the coronavirus crisis.
Thank you, Emmanuelle. And maybe I'll ask Fenna and Brendan to perhaps respond a little bit about, do you think legislation and regulation would drive this faster, or would self-interest in companies own, for example, in the private sector, would take over at one point? Fenna, perhaps over to you first.
Thanks for the question. I don't think that there's necessarily one silver bullet here. There's so many things, so many leverage points in value chains that need to be used and wielded for circular economy to happen. I think it really starts with understanding waste. What is really the waste that needs to be addressed? I think plastic straws, for example, they are a great symbol, but it's not the majority of the plastic waste. And I think that there are many such examples that we need to be careful that we don't do circular economy for the sake of circular economy. Like that way we get circular washing and not really serious circular solutions. Another example there would be biodegradable coffee cups, for example. I think that there are much better solutions there that are based on the creation of return systems that actually decrease the amount of stuff that we use. So I think that is for me really important. What are we really trying to address here? And I think how we can leverage circular strategies to create value. I think we don't have a sufficient enough understanding of that at the moment. I think frequently it's still seen as a cost. If I want to become more sustainable, I need to invest, and that will cost me money, but it can actually be a source of value creation by many companies who were there early. They've spotted that opportunity already. And I think the last point for me would be value chains and collaboration. I think that's really, really important. No single company can become circular on its own. It's always going to need collaborations either upstream or downstream on the value chain there.
Sorry, I was muted there. Brendan, perhaps you could give us some examples where you have seen this in action and how we can learn from those.
Yeah, I think, well, maybe just generally speaking, policy and regulation are critical in order to make circularity happen. Private sector isn't going to do it on its own. Public sector is not going to do it on its own. It really is going to take understanding, taking some of the new learnings out of academia, applying those in different experiments in both public and private sector in order to make it come to fruition. But in thinking about the role that policy and regulation play, it's not only what we hear again and again of the challenges and different definitions of waste depending on where you're moving material, the criteria that need to be met in order to carry that product from one jurisdiction to another, the role that public purchasing can play in scaling circular solutions, but even getting into the discussion around incentives and subsidies. Right now the playing field is biased towards linear thinking and linear solutions. And until that playing field is adjusted to encourage more circular solutions out there, it will continue, companies will run into the barrier of that lack of business case. And as Fenna mentioned, it can cost more. So until we're effectively pricing materials and resources to their true cost and are able to give companies the ability to move materials from one jurisdiction to another when it's safe to do so, and begin to get alignment on different things like definitions and criteria for who can do that and what materials qualify for that. We're going to continue running into some challenges that really don't need to be there. I think one of the best examples is public procurement. There's one country that prohibits any refurbished goods being purchased by the country, and everything has to be new, and that's just based on status quo. That's really not based on anything else. And so it's thinking about some of these low-hanging fruit that can still have a major impact, and this is on very high-end capital equipment that this type of legislation is there for. So certainly can play a role. Business, public sector, we all have a long way to go on it. But I think working together and having those honest conversations of what would be effective policy that keeps keeps the lowest denominator from wreaking havoc in the market and on society, but enables both private sector to achieve their shared goals. That's ultimately what we need to be working towards.
Thank you, Brendan. Now I'm going to ask Karolina to help us a little bit because she's been looking at the questions, and perhaps you can give us one or two examples of the questions that the panel can try and address.
Yes, so I will try to combine a little bit the questions from the chat and from WOA. And I would say that one of the most recurring topics is one of how to motivating and engaging stakeholders to achieve circular economy targets. There has been some mention of specific topics, for example, like fast fashion in achieving circular economy, as well as circular economy relation to growth. Does circular economy continue to assume growth, or does it go alongside calls for no growth or prosperity without growth? And finally, there are many questions around education. So it would be great to hear from the panelists if they would have their insights on what does it mean for educational institutions.
Okay, thanks very much. And perhaps we start with the last question about education, because we haven't really talked about that very much. And let's start with Fenna perhaps this time, who's obviously in education. So over to you. You have on your shoulders the burden of all the educational establishment right now.
It's a very timely question, I think, for me personally, because over the next few weeks I will be teaching a industrial ecology and circular economy module with the master students here. And what I try to do is use many examples of companies already doing great things, so that they, the concepts of eco-design and visible and invisible types of waste, that they're not just abstract concepts, but they actually have a bearing on reality already. Companies are seeing this and are coming up with really great solutions, showing that it's relevant across sectors, across the value chain, across different sizes of companies. I think it needs to be tailored a little bit to the program that you're teaching in, obviously. So I'm teaching in the Master of International Business and Sustainability. So I know those examples will really resonate with them. But I think that there's many other curricula that can have a circular element or a circular module integrated within it. And if we tailor that message, if we can make it relevant and resonate with those programs, I think that there is a lot that we can do to prepare the future business leaders and the future policymakers, for circular economy.
Great. Thank you very much for that. And perhaps, Brendan, are there examples, for example, in the fast fashion world that has transitioned to a better model that you could perhaps tell us a little bit about, or actually from other questions you've seen or Karolina mentioned?
You picked a very interesting question, because actually fashion is probably one of the holes that we have in our membership of WBCSD. So we don't actually work in that too much, but there is a lot of activity going on in other organizations on it, mostly because it's a disaster. There really isn't very much for effective closed loop solutions at the scale, at least, that are needed. So, a lot of work to be done there. There's plenty of people working on it. We are not one of them. But I think on the education front, picking up on something that Fenna mentioned, when you go down and think about it, this really should be in some way touching on every discipline as people go through university or master's programs. So whether you're going into accounting, into policy, into business, architecture, engineering, go on and on and on, each of them should have some element of circularity, or at least some of the principles of circularity within that that are core to what they're learning. So it may not be, in some cases it may be a full module, in some cases it may be, one class. In many cases, increasingly, it's a whole degree. But it really depends on what you're trying to, or what discipline you're in, and how big of a role that you will play in it once you're in your professional career.
Great, and perhaps I come to Emmanuelle, last of the panel members, to express your views about the questions.
Yes, thank you. I think that when we speak about education and circular economy, there are different aspects that we can cover. First of all, higher education. If we can mainstream circular economy principles horizontally throughout all relevant degrees, be it engineering, urban planning, architecture, political science, economics, that would be really splendid. And it's not the case today. We could also increase in a number of technical degrees, a better formation of circular economy professionals, be it masters in circular business management or circular waste management. But this is also applicable in vocational education and training. So, young people preparing for entering the workforce could acquire these skills, and also insisting on lifelong learning. So there are many opportunities to do better. The European Union, on the basis of the treaties, when it relates to education, we have the so-called supportive competencies. So we are not going to interfere in the programs or in the laws of the member states, obviously, but we will try to make sure that we support, for example, with the Pact for Skills or some funds on social innovation, what is being undertaken. As I was also saying, if we can share through the European Technology Institutes and the Knowledge and Innovation Communities broader network that could work together between businesses, research institutes, universities in the coming years, I think that we would really advance the circular economy, which is part of a growth strategy. And that is a very important point. The Green Deal was really conceived as a growth strategy for the European Union, and with a number of environmental, social, and economic goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuelle. Can I now, perhaps, and Ivo will not be prepared for this, but I will quite happily go to you, if you don't mind, for a second, also before I pass to Karolina, to mention the role that ABIS plays, because ABIS brings the academic and the business community together in perhaps in stimulating a move towards a more circular economy.
Yes, thank you, Baback. I think what we're doing today, this is the right example. What's also explains a lot about the future of ABIS. The first place is not only to connect academia and corporate, because you will see also today we talk about the movement itself, we talk about best practices, but also the education part, how to use it, how to implement it in education. And this is much more than only a module somewhere in a curriculum. This is to integrate circularity in all modules, which is really also a systemic change in education. The other thing is what we would also to emphasize here also for the future in to create the best practices is that we talk mainly to business schools, and we need a broader perspective and an approach of interdisciplinary. We are used in business schools to talk about interdisciplinary within the field of social science and management science, but and I think it's already mentioned today, also to include physics, energy, smart cities, all kind of non-social and management science to create a bigger picture. And here I think again is a special role for ABIS in connecting corporates from different sectors and academia, but to create also a wider, a broader approach of interdisciplinary. And what we do today and the next month is to collect again best practices and to make cases and learning materials, which means also that we could support to bring this interdisciplinary approach in the classroom and academia, but also in corporate universities.
Thank you very much, Ivo. And with the time in my mind, I'd like first of all to ask everyone to go to their reaction points and show their appreciation to Emmanuelle, Fenna, and Brendan for their excellent conversations. And I know it's a bit difficult in this environment, but we've really enjoyed it, I'm absolutely sure. Now I'm going to ask Karolina to tell us what are we supposed to do next, Karolina.
Yes, so I just turned the gallery view on to enjoy all the reactions from the audience. Yes, I'm unmuted, thankfully. So thank you very much for the panelists and to Baback for moderating this session. I'm very happy to announce that, as Ivo mentioned, we already are bringing to you 4 best practices from the business world that are engaging in circular economy, and we were able to secure 2 companies that are in the list of most sustainable companies in the GlobeScan Sustainability Leaders Survey, and they are Patagonia and Interface, and you can access their sessions. The links have been sent to you today or yesterday. And at 16:10, we will have 2 members of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation CE 100 network, which are going to be Solapag and Danone. And after that, we are going to conclude. And in the conclusions, you will be able to participate to interactive sessions where you will connect and exchange on your learnings and potentially other collaboration opportunities you in the next sessions. Thank you all so much for being here. We had at the peak 75 participants connected, so we are very glad that you could make it.
Okay, I think we've lost you, Karolina, there right at the end. Well, I did anyway, but is everybody hopefully clear of how to get to the next meeting?
So you need, for the next session, you need the next link, what has been sent to you today or yesterday.
Thank you very much. And I thank every participant as well, and hope you've been enjoying that. And we'll see you at the next session. Thank you. Bye.